The broadcast of the regular meeting of the Minneapolis City Council will now begin.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Bender. I'm the president of the Minneapolis City Council. I'll call to order this regular meeting for Friday, November 13th. Before we proceed, I'll note that this meeting has remote participation by council members and city staff as authorized under the provisions of the Minnesota Open Meeting Law, Section 13D.021, due to the declared state of local public health emergency. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Ellison.
Present.
Councilmember Goodman.
Present.
Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Present.
Councilmember Gordon.
Here.
Councilmember Cano.
Here.
Councilmember Reich.
Present.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Here.
Councilmember Schrader.
Here.
Councilmember Osman.
Here.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Present.
Vice President Jenkins.
Here.
President Bender.
Here.
There are 13 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. The agenda for today's meeting is before us. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Ellison.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Cano.
Aye.
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Schrader.
Aye.
Councilmember Osman.
Aye.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Vice President Jenkins.
Aye.
President Bender.
Aye.
There are 13 ayes.
That carries and the agenda is adopted. The minutes of our regular meeting from October 30th are presented for acceptance. May I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved, Madam President. Second.
Thank you. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Ellison.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Cano.
Aye.
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Schrader.
Aye.
Councilmember Osman.
Aye.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Vice President Jenkins.
Aye.
President Bender.
Aye.
There are 13 ayes.
That carries, and those items are adopted. The minutes are adopted. Next, we have the referral of petitions, communications, and reports to the proper committees. May I have that motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Ellison.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Cano.
Aye.
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Schrader.
Aye.
Councilmember Osman.
Aye.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Vice President Jenkins.
Aye.
President Bender.
Aye.
There are 13 ayes.
That carries, and those matters are referred. Colleagues, today we have two honorary resolutions to begin our meeting to recognize two really amazing city leaders who are leaving for new adventures, new professional opportunities. We'll take up the official items during our regular order of business, but I do want to take the time now at the beginning of our meeting to honor their service. So the first honorary resolution is recognizing the service and leadership of our Civil Rights Director, Velma Korbel. I've asked Councilmember Cunningham to lead this and read the resolution, and we'll turn it over to Councilmember Cunningham before we welcome comments from other council members who may want to speak. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President. Give me one moment as I pull this up. Thank you. All right. I'll just say that I am honored to be able to read this while also sad to read this, but we are excited for Director Korbel's next step. So this resolution is honoring Velma Korbel for her service and dedication to the city of Minneapolis. Whereas Velma Korbel began her employment with the city of Minneapolis as director of the Civil Rights Department on June 1st, 2010, and will leave her service after more than a decade of dedicated leadership guided by the principles of protecting those rights guaranteed under the Civil Rights Ordinance and other laws enforced by the Civil Rights Department, facilitating cultural changes which prohibit discrimination, and engaging the community as well as policymakers, leaders, and employees throughout the city enterprise for the advancement of social justice. And during her tenure, Ms. Korbel eliminated the backlog of approximately 300 cases and created more efficient processes and rigorous performance standards to increase transparency and public confidence in the department's complaint handling outcomes. And Ms. Korbel led a disparity study which formed the foundation for the city's ongoing supplier diversity program, which helps ensure the inclusion of Black, Indigenous, and people of color owned and operated businesses in the work of the city government. And through her leadership, Ms. Korbel has caused more than $150 million to be earned by BIPOC and women-owned and operated businesses through oversight of the city's small and underutilized business program. And Ms. Korbel led the creation of the Office of Police Conduct Review as a division within the Civil Rights Department to replace an underperforming and under-resourced civilian review authority, establishing a neutral professional agency to investigate allegations of police misconduct and to promote adherence to the highest performance standards for police officers. And Ms. Korbel created the Division of Equity and Employment within the Civil Rights Department to function as a liaison on the city enterprise work on race and equity to administer the Urban Scholars Program. And Ms. Korbel led the creation, development, and administration of the city's Urban Scholars Program, a leading career and professional development program focused on advancing opportunities for majority BIPOC university, college, and graduate program students, which during her tenure has served more than 500 scholars and provided $1.3 million in wages to program participants and provided a pathway for many to serve in public service careers. And Ms. Korbel created the Minneapolis History Makers, a profile series featuring emerging and mid-career leaders from the Twin Cities African-American community who shared the department's ideals of advancing civil rights and removing barriers to equity. And Ms. Korbel was instrumental in forming the Minneapolis Black Employee Network and served as its executive sponsor and employee resource group that offers Black city employees peer support, mentoring, professional development, and career counseling and well-being supportive services. And Ms. Korbel created the department's Division of Labor Standards to enforce the city's workplace regulations, which includes ordinances addressing sick and safe time, minimum wage, wage theft, and freelance workers, and under her leadership, helped recover approximately $1 million in lost wages for Minneapolis workers through the contract compliance and labor standards divisions. And during her tenure with the city of Minneapolis, Ms. Korbel served on various work groups and task force within the city enterprise, including the Vision Zero Steering Committee and the Race Equity Steering Committee, to guarantee that a civil rights perspective was considered in decision-making that affected all Minneapolitans. And Ms. Korbel, through her advocacy and championship of important principles and her strong and steady leadership, has positioned the Civil Rights Department as a strategic partner with other city departments and divisions across the enterprise and with community stakeholders and allies. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that the mayor and city council, in recognition of her significant contributions to the city of Minneapolis and her stewardship of the Civil Rights Department, to hereby present this resolution to Velma Korbel, together with their most sincere thanks and appreciation, as well as our best wishes in her future endeavors. Thank you so much, Velma. It has been an honor to work with you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham. Mayor Fry.
Thank you, Madam President. It is with a heavy heart that I speak today about Director Korbel sort of taking the next step. She has been such a mainstay at the city, and it's even more frustrating to be doing this virtually because if you know Velma, she's a very warm person. I would much prefer to be giving her a hug after this resolution and collection of speeches. But she's someone who cares deeply about this city, who cares deeply about our residents. She's forthright and honest in her work. And I've seen time and time again where she stands by her principles and quite simply gets the job done. You know, I remember before I was even working at the city and I was an attorney doing civil rights cases, you wouldn't necessarily bring a civil rights case to the city of Minneapolis, even though you had the potential to get treble damages because there was such a backlog. You couldn't get money for your client for sometimes a couple of years. And because of that, you chose to go elsewhere. Now, Velma has eliminated that backlog. She's worked on projects ranging from contract compliance to heading up MBEN. She's done extraordinary work around workforce regulations and our small and underutilized business program. She's really served our city brilliantly, and especially I think these last 8 or 9 months, and whether that was stepping in on the TRO or finding ways where our city can operate more efficiently in the face of great budget shortfalls, she's been there to do the difficult and really hard work. So Director Korbel, we appreciate you. We wish you so well on your next venture, and we know you'll stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor Fry. Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you so much, Madam President. And boy, I have worked with several civil rights directors at the city of Minneapolis. I'm somewhat embarrassed to say. However, the professionalism that you have brought to the Office of Civil Rights in the past 10 years is quite remarkable, Director Korbel, and I will still call you that for at least one more week. And your mentorship of myself over the 10 years that you have been with the city has been completely just overwhelming and deeply appreciated. The Urban Scholars Program, which I think is one of the most important and successful initiatives the city of Minneapolis has ever done, is a tremendous asset, I think, to the entire city. Urban Scholars work throughout the city and get opportunities for learnings and employment that they may not otherwise have had if not for the Urban Scholars Program. Since its inception and every year, my office has had an Urban Scholar as a summer intern, and I hired an Urban Scholar, Zoe Bougeret, to be my policy associate in my office, and her work has been outstanding. And I know that's from the deep grooming and training and opportunities that were presented to her through the Urban Scholars Program, as well as her own talent and tenacity. You know, the initiation and leadership of MBEN has been phenomenal and helps our Black employees at the city of Minneapolis to continue to show up as their best selves, and offer gratitude for that. And not only just internally with the the Black staff, but I think your sage wisdom throughout the organization has helped many department heads and other leaders throughout the city to deal with the enormous challenges of really making sure that we are an equity-focused city, and I just can't express my gratitude and sincere desire for your continued success in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Mark Ruff, our city coordinator, to say a few words on behalf of city staff.
Thank you, Council President Bender. As you can see, most of the department heads are on this call. It's our way of electronically crowding the room to show our support for Velma. In addition to all the other accomplishments, I want to add two other very personal ones for us as department heads and staff, and those are accomplishments which are personal. They are both the role of counselor and mentor. And what I mean by counselor is when I needed advice, and this is true for many other people, when I needed advice on how to move forward on a particularly difficult issue, I called Velma. And when we had a new department head who was starting, it's a tradition to assign a mentor. And I would say Velma has received more requests for mentorship than any other department head in recent years. And I just think those are two testimonies to the quality of an individual, and in particular, Velma's personal commitment to the city and its mission. So thank you, Velma, on behalf of all the department heads and all the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Ruff. Director Korbel, I'll just echo so much what people have said and offer my personal thanks to you. It's you're fierce and funny and such a strong leader. I think someone that we all appreciate, as you've heard from others, your body of work and your leadership, but also what you bring as a person to each of our lives at City Hall. So I see Councilmember Cunningham in queue to add the last thought. We'll give our chair the final word before we turn it over to you, Director, if you'd like to say anything. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to express my gratitude. I have been fortunate to have worked with Velma for many years now, even before being elected. I was fortunate to be able to be a champion of the work that the Civil Rights Department has led, particularly urban scholars, while I worked in the mayor's office. And since becoming a city council member, ensuring that there was always a champion for the Civil Rights Department who acknowledged and made sure that the work of the Civil Rights Department remained on council's consciousness as well as the greater public. Like, I felt very strongly that and have felt very honored to really serve in that space. Prior to our council reorganization, I was the chair of the Public Health, Environment, Civil Rights, and Engagement Committee. And since the restructuring, now the Public Health and Safety Committee, which still includes the Civil Rights Department, I have had the very good fortune of working very closely with Velma and many of her staff since becoming a council member. And I can just say that the work that this department does is phenomenal. And the energy that comes out of this department is phenomenal. And that speaks to the leadership of Ms. Korbel. We have been incredibly fortunate as a city to have her leadership. As a former Black employee, well, I'm still Black, but as a former employee who is Black, I've looked up to Velma. I have felt inspired by her leadership, and I'm excited to see what her next steps are. And I know that many other Black employees and leaders in the city also look to you. We are so excited for your next steps, and also so sad for our city and ourselves. We're like, oh, we love you, love being around you, but your leadership has just been so critical. And congratulations on your next steps and your future endeavors. Please don't forget us at the city, and please do stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Would you like to say anything?
Thank you, President Bender and council members, and to Mayor Fry, Council Vice President, Councilmember Cunningham. Thank you for those very nice words. You're very kind, and I want to thank you for the resolution and the recognition. And I also would be remiss if I didn't go back and say thank you to former mayors Ryback and Hodges for also having the confidence in me to lead the work of the Civil Rights Department. I was thinking back this morning on the number of reappointment cycles that I've been through, and this most recent one made 6, and about half of them I actually remember. The ones I don't remember were probably the good ones. So I just wanted to say that that is a lot of time spent in front of the council talking about the work of the department. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that. I also wanted to say thank you to my department head colleagues. You know, that the department heads are some of the best and brightest individuals that I have ever worked with. And they are passionate about the work. They love the city, and they are deserving of recognition, not just as team members of mine, but of how they lead in the spaces that they occupy. And one of the things that I was thinking about this morning is that I would hope that each one of those department heads are creating a resolution in their mind about all of the accomplishments that they have made and the contributions that they have made to the city, and that they would get their flowers now while they are still here, rather than when they're walking out the door when it really matters. And I've just been very fortunate to work with such a wonderful group of people. I would also say to the Minneapolis Black Employee Network that was recognized by both the Council Vice President and Councilmember Cunningham, that there was not an organization like the Black Employee Network when I came to the city of Minneapolis, and I wish there had been. And one of the highlights of my time here has been being the executive sponsor for the Minneapolis Black Employee Network. And I saw my role with this group as just someone to be a helper and someone to just clear the way for the individuals that are members of this cohort, because there are leaders in positions here in the city where these folks don't occupy formal positions of leadership, but they are leading from where they are. And it has just been my privilege to be able to offer whatever small bit of encouragement that I could to the individuals who are part of this group. And I just am just going to be looking at their successes into the future, and I'll be their biggest cheerleader. Councilmember Cunningham read some of the highlights from the resolution of the work that I'm most proud of, but that work cannot be accomplished alone. And it is really the product of the team that I will probably miss the most. And that is the group of employees inside the Civil Rights Department. And whether it's been employees from the past that have gone on to bigger and better things, or the employees in the department right now, they have just been great to work with. They have stood up beside me and had my back. And when I thought that I was clearing the way for them, they were actually clearing the way for me to be successful, to do the work for the residents and guests and visitors in the city of Minneapolis. They've just been fabulous. And it has been really my honor and privilege to serve the people of Minneapolis. And I am not leaving the Metro, not leaving the work. And so I will continue to do the best that I can for the people that I serve. So thank you for everything.
Thank you, Director. Our wonderful city clerk will make sure that we give you the resolution so that you can have that. And thank you, Casey, for always making sure we have those things ready and in place. Thank you, Director, again for everything.
Thank you.
Our next resolution is honoring the service of our Information Technology Director, Fadhil. He hasn't been here as long, but he has made a big, huge impact in our city and how we work with data and information. So I want to turn it over to Councilmember Johnson, who very early in our first term together championed open and access to data. So Councilmember Johnson will be taking the lead and reading this resolution.
Well, thank you, Madam President. I just have to say it is really, really hard to see Director Fadhil go from the city. He has been, for those of us that have worked with him, so responsive, so on top of things. He has been just a really incredible leader in the department and been really nimble with responding to these unprecedented circumstances that we faced, even thinking through everything with the pandemic and having to quickly shift the way that we work as a city, the way that our workforce continues to serve the public. And it was under his leadership that we were able to so successfully and smoothly make that transition. And when we look at what happened with the civil unrest, the cyber attacks, it was under his leadership that we made sure our networks, our systems were secure, that we were protecting residents and ensuring that our services could continue uninterrupted. And so it's really tough to see you go, Director. It really is. And I know you're going to be missed here at the city, but we are very happy to have had you for the time that we did and all of your accomplishments. So I will go ahead and read the resolution honoring Fadhil for his service and dedication to the city of Minneapolis. Whereas Fadhil began his employment with the city of Minneapolis on November 4th, 2019, and in this short time has led his information technology department to be One IT, working to support the city enterprise effectively during this high demand and challenging year. And whereas Mr. Fadhil orchestrated the transition of the city's workforce to a high-functioning remote work environment in response to the global health pandemic caused by the COVID-19 virus, distributing hundreds of laptop computers for city departments and divisions, launching new platforms and applications, and leading the One IT team in ensuring a seamless conversion with no disruption in the delivery of the city's core services and programs. Whereas Mr. Fadhil led the launch and further development of an online meeting and collaboration platform and assembled a cross-departmental team to enable public hearings and meetings to continue, including the regular, adjourned, special, and emergency meetings of the City Council, its standing committees, as well as independent policymaking bodies and the city's many appointed boards and commissions. And whereas Mr. Fadhil stood up and enabled technology in multiple temporary and emergency city locations on a moment's notice to accommodate the changing needs due to the pandemic, including the essential election operations located at the Minneapolis Convention Center. And whereas Mr. Fadhil successfully led the city's IT department in defending the enterprise against multiple cyber attacks and added security measures in place, including securing and stabilizing the city's public website. And whereas, with his expert knowledge of technology, coupled with his leadership skills, relentless focus on partnerships, and a drive towards results, Mr. Fadhil has catapulted the IT department to most valuable player status within the city's enterprise, always showing up and successfully delivering. And whereas Mr. Fadhil created a strategic priority for a smart city and made the significant strides in the city's transition to become a data-driven, transparent environment, and revealed the game-changing Minneapolis data source, a collection of dashboards that are easy to access and consume by all. And whereas Mr. Fadhil spearheaded digital equity work with corporate technology partners and government agencies to break down access barriers and address the digital divide and related disparities that exist within the community, including putting the city's recycled computers directly back into the community. Whereas Fadi Fadhil has demonstrated true care and commitment for the residents, businesses, and visitors of Minneapolis, and has used his leadership of the Information Technology Department to make positive advancements inside and outside the city's enterprise, leading with great humility, a sense of optimism, and by empowering his team and serving as a true partner with city departments and divisions, earning the trust, confidence, and admiration of elected officials, his colleagues, and staff through the city. And whereas the city of Minneapolis will continue to benefit from Fadi Fadhil's leadership, passion, and impact for years to come. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and city council, in recognition of the truly transformational leadership and significant and positive impact he has had in such a short time during some of the most challenging circumstances, do hereby present this resolution to Fadi Fadhil together with their most sincere thanks and appreciation and best wishes in his future endeavors. Thank you, Madam President. And I just would be remiss if I didn't add one last comment that wasn't captured in my earlier comments. Director Fadhil, you have such an amazing, incredible story, and you bring just so much energy and delight to the work, and it shows and it excites people and gets them working in collaboration. And it is truly a loss for our enterprise that you are moving on, but we just wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Fry.
Thank you, Madam President. I remember talking to Mr. Fadi Fadhil just over about a year ago. I thought he had great intellect, great hair, a really excellent backstory, and he proved immediately that he was the right person for the job. And although he's only been here, about a year now, I think you can multiply that out many times given the year that we've had. To be the head of IT through a global pandemic that requires the kind of virtual accessibility that we've needed, to totally have to reboot so many of our different systems and simultaneously protect them against outside threats. I mean, it's been incredible work, and I'm sure he feels like that work has lasted far longer than a year. And I can remember back to some of the most difficult times of the pandemic and some of the most difficult times of unrest, where, yeah, of course, there were plenty of attempted hacks and or issues with our IT system that Fadi just stepped up. He remained cool and collected in the face of a whole lot of frustration, at least for me. I don't know what I'm talking about with respect to IT. I need very much to rely on people that do. And so to have that, cool and collected person right there in our city was like having a built-in Radio Shack for those 80s babies. But really do appreciate all the work that you've done, Director. You're going places, you've been places, and we hope that you come back to visit.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Director, on behalf of the council, just want to echo the resolution and the comments from the mayor and Councilmember Johnson. Thank you so much for your innovation, for leading change. The recent work with the open data portals and the idea that we can just have data whenever we want. We don't have to go through a whole series of meetings and lots of back and forth requesting particular types of static data. You know, it sounds like it shouldn't be, but it's transformative for the city. And I think you've left us in a good place to keep moving in that direction. So I believe your leadership will really continue to affect the city even after you have gone on to this next opportunity. Mr. Ruff would also like to speak, our city coordinator, Mr. Ruff.
Thank you, Council President. As many of you know from talking with Fadi, he loves to use metaphors, right? I remember during some of the difficult times, it was always great that I would call Fadi and he would say things like, well, you know, this is not my first rodeo. Which I just thought was a classic thing to say in our urban environment with Fadi's background. The real issue I think that I want to bring forward in terms of a metaphor is Fadi is a gardener, right? He is somebody who has taken the city, looked across it, seen the different fields that we have, and recognized that some needed fertilizing, some needed more water, some of the plants just need to be pulled out and replanted. And at the same time, he's done that in building up his own team. And so that's what I think I'm most grateful for, that all of us want to leave a legacy that moves on and carries on and grows. And I think Fadi has done that with building his team within IT. So thank you, Fadi, for everything on behalf of the enterprise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruff. Fadi, would you like to say anything?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. I'm doing my best to battle my emotions that are rushing right now. But 15 years ago, I arrived at Minneapolis on a political asylum, escaping injustice somewhere else. And I had nothing but my education and my ability to speak English from watching movies. In Minneapolis, I found some kindness and some love that I have not encountered elsewhere. Sadly, even in my home country at the time. I felt home, I felt welcomed, I felt included. I remember the first time I was talking to someone and they were describing to me how trucks would drive on a lake, a frozen lake, and I thought they were joking. Or when I had my first hot dish when I was a family's guest at a dinner. I forever and will forever be grateful to the city that embraced me and gave me a home, and the community that just accepted me and helped me grow. And I'm so grateful to having had the opportunity to serve this city. And I don't think any of us can ever give enough back for the city. And we are all part of it. We're all responsible for keeping it amazing and pushing it forward to what our residents and our community deserves. In IT, I felt that technology, and I think the message should always be technology is an accelerator. It's never and should never be a hurdle. And that was something that we used to our advantage, and it wasn't that hard given the type of staff that we have here in the city. That relentless, unconditional commitment. Even when they are being beat by it, they don't connect the two dots and they just keep serving. And that dedication in IT and across the departments have been our best and most valuable assets. People are our most valuable assets. It was never about technology, it was about people. So I have my forever gratitude and sincere thanks to my colleagues, to all the departments and the partners that we worked with and their staff. My sincere gratitude to the IT department. This group, this staff are the gift that keeps giving. They're very knowledgeable. They know what they're doing. They're very up to date with technology. And most importantly, they have heart and a can-do attitude. I will also say that I don't believe anything is going to change. This is only the beginning. The first steps are the hardest. And when it comes to technology, the most powerful thing technology can do is data. Data is power. This is what we need the most. And we have broke those grounds, and now we can only move forward. And the way IT operates, it's not a one-person show. We are a collective group. So that momentum will continue, and producing these results, I'm certain in my heart, will not slow down, but only will speed up. Again, my gratitude and thanks to my colleagues, the department heads that partnered with me, that were open and transparent about what are the needs, what are the services that we could provide. My gratitude and thanks to city coordinator for his guidance as well and support. And we were talking about mentors, and when I joined the city, I was assigned the city clerk, Casey Carl, to be my mentor. And man, that was amazing. That was amazing. It was very, very strong, very passionate, and was always helpful in focusing on the big picture and also communicating the sense of urgency, which is something that we need the most. And really, it was an exciting experience. And I don't think our collaboration ever ended after the mentorship period, but I think we even became tighter. So Casey, thank you very much. We've been definitely good partners, and you've been instrumental. And again, my thanks to all my colleagues. I am still here in the city. I will forever be a servant for the city, and I will never hesitate a moment to do whatever I can as well. So thank you, everyone. I already miss being here, but we'll be around. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for those really beautiful words about our city. With that, we have concluded those two items. We will take up the official actions again later in the agenda. So that brings us to the order of new business, beginning with the mayor's regular report on the state of our local health emergency, addressing the city's response to COVID-19. Welcome back, Mayor Frey.
Thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity to share with you this regular COVID report, and I will dive right in. There have been 19 emergency regulations to date. I won't get into any of the specifics on each of them, as I have previously reported out on those topics. Moving on to the health report by the numbers. Before I jump into the numbers themselves, I just want to briefly reflect on the fact that these numbers are spiking in every form. Although Minneapolis has certainly positioned itself well with respect to our diligence, our regulation, and willingness to listen to science and epidemiologists, the numbers are still going up. They are still high, and while we're not seeing the numbers in the Dakotas or in many areas of greater Minnesota, they're still concerning. So the total approximate number of completed tests thus far is 3,253,880. That's more than 500,000 from the last report. Total positive cases are 201,795. In the interest of saving time, I'm not going to go over the remaining bullet points of the Minnesota case information, but if we can flip the slide to hospitalization. The total cases hospitalized is 12,443. Total cases hospitalized in the ICU is 3,086. For Minneapolis case information, the total positive cases is 16,783. That's more than 3,000 last time we met. Total hospitalized is 1,447. Totally recovered is 14,501, with 269 tragically deceased. I won't read the Minneapolis demographic data, but you should have a chart both on your screen as well as in your report that you've been sent. So moving on to the health department, the situational update. The total number of cases here in Minneapolis has increased by 15.4% over the previous week. Hospitalizations increased by 4.9%, and ICU admissions increased by 8.2%. And over the past week, the average daily counts have increased from the mid-70s to close to 300 cases per day. Just to repeat that, it's gone from the mid-70s over the past week to 300 per day. So we've surpassed 300 cases per day, which is 3 times in the past. That happened 3 times in the past week. We're also seeing increases across age, racial, and ethnic groups as well. Both the city and the state rates have doubled over this last week, and both Minnesota and Minneapolis is now in the red category. This week, the governor announced new restrictions designed to slow and stop the explosive spread of COVID across the state. I think most of you are familiar, but restaurants and bars now starting tonight at 10 p.m. in-person service is not permitted between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. So no service between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Bar seating, counter service, and standing bar games are also not allowed. As you know, we've already had a regulation in the city prohibiting the seating in bar areas and requiring table service. Indoor capacity is limited to 150 people and may not exceed 50% of total capacity. Wedding receptions and other large events starting November 27th, events will be capped at 50 people, and beginning December 11th, the limit will be 25 people. Events are not permitted between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. For private gatherings, starting tonight at 10 p.m., indoor and outdoor gatherings will be limited to 10 people from no more than 3 households, including the host. Case investigation and contact tracing. The health department continues to conduct follow-up on individuals diagnosed with COVID-19, as well as contact tracing at workplaces and with exposed individuals. Currently, there are 36 active case investigators, including 4 non-MHD enterprise staff and 11 AmeriCorps staff. And we very much appreciate the flexibility in our staff and the willingness to transition to positions where we need them most, especially during this pandemic. I'm going to skip on now to community COVID-19 testing and flu shots. 319 people received free COVID tests at Hennepin Avenue United Methodist Church on November 7th, and approximately 100 flu shots were given. The state health department is offering free saliva testing over at the Minneapolis Convention Center. I know many of you have gone, I am as well, and that's available 7 days a week, noon to 7 on weekdays and 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on weekends. An additional saliva testing site is open to the public at the MSP airport. MHD is participating in regional conversations to plan for vaccination of phase 1 critical populations, including staff at long-term care, assisted living, and skilled nursing facilities. And we're also planning for vaccination of other high-risk groups, such as public safety workers, as well as first responders. The city's vaccine distribution plan for phase 1 will be submitted by the state by December 4th. I'm not going to dive too much into the businesses, but I'll just say that the environmental health inspectors completed 87 food safety routine inspections with an emphasis on COVID-19 preparedness plans and on the implementation of COVID-19 protocols. I'm going to skip down to Thanksgiving, noting that the health department shared guidance when planning for upcoming holidays and that the information is noted in the report you have received. Moving now to responding to community needs. This past week, supplies were distributed to a Minneapolis Public Housing Authority high-rise building and a senior care facility. Federal CARES funding is being used to purchase personal protective gear and hygiene products, plus equipment, signage, and supplies to support COVID-19 testing and flu shot events. As for procurement, as of November 11th, 2020, there's been $9,120,115 spent. This is an increase since the last report of about $3,578,785 on the following purchases. Food Security Initiative, that's $923,000. Mask purchases at $424,000. COVID testing awareness campaign for $21,000. Coolers for tests and vaccines for $56,000. And then testing resources for $2,153,750. This report includes only purchases made through the emergency purchasing regulation, which allows for emergency COVID-19 purchases to be expedited to respond to urgent COVID response needs. And as I've noted previously, the total costs that we've experienced through this pandemic have far exceeded the amount included in the emergency purchases order. I'm not going to get into depth on the public safety figures, as I believe you have them in front of you and are at least not directly related, but certainly indirectly related to COVID-19. But I believe the chief is on if there are additional questions in that respect. I'm going to move beyond fire to the state and federal activity. Well, actually, on the fire topic, excuse me, the public hearing for the appointment of Brian Tyner as chief is scheduled for the next week's Public Health and Safety Committee meeting on November 19th at 1:30. Appreciate him, and as always, very much appreciate our Chief Friedel for all of his work. Moving on to state and federal activity, the newly elected legislature will come together for the regular session starting January 5th, 2021. The legislature met for the 6th special session of 2020 to once again extend the governor's emergency powers for another 30 days. And contrary to the previous special session, neither the Senate or the House took up a motion to take up removal of the governor's powers. As the federal election results are still a topic of conversation, so is the possibility of a 4th phase stimulus bill. While the House, Senate, and White House continue to be remained deadlocked in negotiations, Senate Majority Leader McConnell did state that an additional stimulus package needs to be done before the end of the year. That is a quote. Agreement on the size and content of a stimulus bill continues to be an unresolved issue between Senate Majority Leader McConnell as well as House Speaker Pelosi. Food security has been an increasingly important topic, as it always is, but certainly some of the fault lines of inequities are highlighted even more during this pandemic. And so through the CARES Act funding security food grants initiative to provide emergency food relief, the city of Minneapolis has awarded more than $935,000 in federal CARES Coronavirus Relief Fund funding to 37 local food shelves, food pop-ups, farmers markets, restaurants, and faith communities distributing free food and meals directly to Minneapolis residents. Besides providing immediate food relief, these grant awards will build capacity in the emergency food relief system, positioning community partners to sustain the increased level of service needs brought on by the impacts of COVID-19. I really want to highlight this work because this money has enabled so many of our partners, our community-based partners, to get set up quickly, to prepare for the winter, to provide some form of shelter as people wait for their food. It's in some cases in lines. It's allowed us to plan ahead, and there's no more basic needs than shelter and food. And I think it signals that we are stepping up in those areas, especially for those of us that are struggling most. The city received 47 applications with requests of that nearly $1.3 million for the original $470,000 of the CARES funding, and the city allocated then another $465,000 in CARES and CRF to the pool. I feel strongly this is the right choice for this money right now. Again, food, shelter, we need to be watching out for those of us who are most vulnerable through this pandemic. Awards range from $2,000 to $53,000, and they pay for food, hygiene services, and equipment, and fund a diverse pool of organizations with high barriers to food access. The city allocated an additional $65,000 in CARES CRF funds to address specific identified gaps in the emergency food relief system in Minneapolis. And in collaboration with these efforts, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is donating more than 83,000 pounds of non-perishable food valued at over $88,000 to local food banks. We are so appreciative. And the Food Group and Second Harvest Heartland to support emergency food relief in Minneapolis. Thank you. This is their second donation with the same amount of food delivered to the food banks in July of 2020. Yeah, and you know, they're rolling in with these huge tractor trailers worth of food, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and just wanted to say, you know, thank you for their efforts there. It is greatly appreciated, and the work along with Second Harvest Heartland is making a big difference. As for gap funding, the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority has completed review of all applications in the Stable Homes, Stable Schools emergency expansion list. 538 households were approved for assistance from this portion of the Minneapolis Gap Funds for Housing program. And, you know, we had this program obviously set up to begin with, but it allowed us to ignite even a little bit further to get these very essential needs met. There are 3 additional schools that were added to the Stable Homes, Stable Schools program. One was Falwell, one was Webster, and I believe the third was Whittier. Well, I believe that's accurate, but I'll check back. So community prevention partners and city staff will continue to work through the emergency housing assistance list to complete the full verification and approval process for each applicant. To date, 951 households have been approved for assistance through this portion of the Minneapolis Gap Funds housing program. In total, 1,489 households have been approved for emergency assistance payments, totaling $2,245,567 as of Tuesday, November 10th. As for the forgivable loan program, they have been fully awarded. And that is all I have today. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this presentation. I was hoping that you could go back and explain a little bit more. I'm getting some text messages from constituents who are hoping for some clarification around the limitations indoors and about how that is being enforced. Because, like, I mean, I've been seeing pictures of long lines outside of bars, and so like folks really, like, nobody's wearing masks in those like tight lines. So I'm just I, along with my constituents, are wondering around if you could just explain that one more time and then how that's being enforced. Thank you.
Madam President, Councilmember Cunningham, thank you for the question. First, I'll note for those of you that are looking at photographs and/or videos online, some of them are accurately depicting what has happened. Some of them are not accurately depicting the recent events. And so, you know, in other words, it could have been some of them are videos from prior to COVID-19. Some of them are very present. They're real. We need to take notice, acknowledge it, and then act. If Director Musicant could speak to some of the restrictions indoors that the state has added, perhaps can further elaborate from what I have already stated, and then we can also shift to enforcement.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Cunningham and Mayor. What exactly were your further questions? I remember your enforcement question piece of the question, but other questions about the indoor limitations?
If that could just be explained a little bit more, like clarified what that means and what that looks like, and then how that is informed or how that is enforced.
Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham. Madam Chair. Yeah, the changes really are on the overall advice. Certainly the events, I think, will be easier to enforce because the events are often at facilities that we can regulate. So if someone's having a an event after a wedding or a gathering following a funeral. Those will be easier to enforce, and some guidance has been given that allows for those who are planning ahead to kind of scale back their plans over the next few weeks, getting down to the lower number. In terms of the enforcement of indoor personal gatherings of families, I believe that essentially that is a very strong guidance. I'm not sure that there is enforcement of families that decide to have more than 3 households represented in a gathering, but it is certainly advice we want to follow as community members and as members of our families and our social networks, so that we can stem the tide of the growth of the virus. So it is more a really important guideline for our personal gatherings.
And I'll add on briefly, Director. I think the governor commented yesterday or the day before that this is nobody's rating your Thanksgiving dinner or your home. There's not going to be a constant check-in, but it is strong guidance recognizing the concern.
And Councilmember Cunningham, in terms of your suggestion of concern, and rightly so, of people gathering outside of venues, that is something that our city staff are working with businesses to help them control and guide and create markers on the outside of buildings. And when we hear about that, we are working with the businesses to get their assistance in helping to space people out when they are outside waiting to enter venues.
Yeah. And if Interim Director Andrea Brennan could comment again briefly as well. I know they've been doing some good work with business licensing around some of the concerns they're seeing in our commercial outlets.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to note that business licensing will be doing targeted inspections over the weekend based on complaints.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I don't see any other questions. Are there any other questions for the mayor? Seeing none, it looks like we have completed that. I'll direct the clerk to receive and file that report. Thank you, Mayor. And so that brings us to the reports of our committees, which I think I have out of order.
Madam President, there is a second item under new business, and I can briefly just speak to this. It's a letter from the Charter Commission, which basically closes out the review of the council-initiated proposed amendment to the city charter related to community safety violence prevention. The council had, as you all are aware, already acted at its meeting on August 14th to delete that matter from the agenda. That closes the file in terms of the council's process. The Charter Commission had previously opted to continue its review of that proposed amendment under the statute, which would have given them until November 27th. They have acted to reject the proposed amendment. The letter then closes the file from a clerk perspective, and so both the files in the council and the commission process are closed. The commission has indicated it will submit a full report to the council about its findings and research in the next coming weeks. So this item is also a receive and file, and is merely an administrative process of closing out the files.
Thank you, Mr. Carl. And would we expect that report at our POGO committee?
I can certainly make sure it comes to whichever committee you would direct, Madam President, and when it hits my desk, my process would be to connect with you to see how you wish to have that received in the council's process.
Great, thank you, Mr. Carl. And those materials are linked in the online agenda. And thank you for jumping in. I'm missing a page of my agenda. So are there any questions or comments on that update from the Charter Commission? Seeing none, I will direct the clerk to receive and file that report from the Charter Commission. And then that brings us to the reports of our standing committees. We usually begin with the Biz Committee, so I will ask for the report from the Business Inspections, Housing and Zoning Committee given by the Chair, Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the council. The Business Inspections Housing and Zoning Committee is bringing 21 items forward for approval this morning. Item number 1 is a rental hall license and extended hours of operation. Item 2 is denying an appeal with regard to a property at 2025 West River Road. Item number 3 is granting an appeal for a property at 164 Cedar Lake Road and a number of properties on James Avenue. Item number 4 is denying an appeal for a property at 1219 West 31st Street. Item number 5 is a conditional use permit appeal, and the committee voted to deny the appeal for the California Building Company. Item number 6 is a rezoning that was denied by the committee. Item number 7 is the license approvals, and 8 are the gambling license approvals. Item number 9 is extending the closing date on a land sale. Item number 10 is some easements with regard to the Met Council's D bus rapid transit line. Item number 11 is a loan at 1500 44th Avenue North from the Commercial Property Development Fund. Item 12 is decertifying the Grainbelt Brew House from its tax increment financing district. Item 13 is a grant application to the U.S. Department of Labor for Employment and Training Services. Item 14 is a contract with MFIP for employment and training services through the county. Item 15 are contracts with Build Wealth Minnesota and the City of Lakes Community Land Trust relating to our perpetual affordability ownership land trust program. Item 16 are contracts with Build Wealth and Neighborhood Works partners for home ownership opportunities lending services. Item 17 are appointments to our Workforce Board. Item 18 are reappointments to the Public Housing Authority Board. Item 19 is accepting a grant for citywide community engagement from the National Trust for Historic Preservation for the African American Cultural Action Fund. Item number 20 is an environmental assessment worksheet. This is proving the adequacy. And item 21 is a rezoning for the above mentioned Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity project on Cedar Lake Road and James. So with that, Madam President, I'll move all items except item 6, which was the denial of the rezoning, because I believe Councilmember Fletcher would like to make a different motion. So I'll just pull that off and ask that we move items 1 through 5 and 7 through 21 for approval this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Goodwin has moved the committee report except for that item. Is there any discussion on the other items before we return? Councilmember Cunningham, are you in queue for these items?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to just take a quick moment to speak to item number 11, approving the Commercial Property Development Fund loan to HWJ Properties. I just want to really express my excitement about this project and seeing the city invest in Northside Black-owned businesses and Black entrepreneurs. Houston White is an entrepreneur from the North Side, invested in the North Side, and has done really cool work and is super committed to building out 44th Avenue North. The two of us have been working together on a vision for developing a commercial corridor within the 4th Ward, which we don't have one now. And the corner that his business occupies is really an opportunity to be very catalytic for the development of a corridor. So I'm really excited. We're looking at mixed use work, live spaces that are affordable, expanding his business. I mean, it's just, it's so exciting to see the city investing in Northside Black-owned businesses in this way. I've been working incredibly hard to try to create these sort of pathways for investment, and I'm excited to see it come to fruition in this way. It's incredibly well-deserved. And so I just want to say thank you to all the staff in CPED who have worked on this. Thank you to Houston for all his hard work. And I'm excited to I'm looking forward to a groundbreaking ceremony in our community for it. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam President. I was just hoping to hear a little bit more about the item regarding the D line, public transportation on the agenda. Is there anybody that can speak to that?
Madam President?
So that, yeah, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. This is just simply authorizing a temporary construction easement and a permanent easement at 726 Franklin Avenue to facilitate the project. It's also passing a resolution authorizing the sale of the easement for a contemporary construction easement. So it was a consent item on the agenda, and it involves property on East Franklin, the 700 block of East Franklin.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. And for reference, that was item 10 in the report. Anything further? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Ellison.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Cano.
Aye.
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Schrader.
Aye.
Councilmember Osman.
Aye.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Vice President Jenkins.
Aye.
President Bender.
Aye.
There are 13 ayes.
That carries, and those items are adopted. That returns us to items 5 and 6. And Councilmember Fletcher is in queue for these items.
Thank you, President Bender. I only intend to make a motion on item 6. We just approved item 5.
Thank you all.
As recommended by the committee. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the rezoning on 2301 California in contradiction to what the committee did. And I want to just explain a little bit about why and provide a little bit of context on the project. So one of the items of testimony that I think was impactful at committee was the notion that the industrial living overlay was intended for existing buildings, which may actually be accurate from when it was passed, but certainly it has become the practice of our city to use it in these cases. And it is the plan and practice of CPED to use the industrial living overlay to achieve the production mixed use spaces that are designated in the 2040 comp plan that we approved. And in fact, it is the only tool for doing so. So if we were to say that it could not be used for that purpose, we would not have a way of achieving the 2040 comprehensive plan. So I want to make sure everybody understands that context in terms of the technical argument about why we're about why I'm making this motion and why I think it's the right thing for us to do. And there's significant precedent that I sent you all by email for using ILOD for new construction projects as well as for the conversion of existing projects in industrial spaces. That being said, I also just want to provide everybody with a little bit of context about what this project is. This is on a vacant site that was grain silos. Those grain silos were knocked down a couple of years ago, and this project is production space on the first floor and 160 units of affordable housing, including 31 units that will be affordable at 40% AMI or lower if they're able to apply for MPHA vouchers, as they're hoping to. So that means we're getting some of the deeply affordable housing that we need, and we're locking in affordable housing at a variety of levels, including some deeply affordable and some sort of workforce housing that really aligns with the values and the character of the Arts District. In many conversations I've had with a lot of the folks who have really thought about what supports the Northeast Arts District, one of the things that differentiates our Arts District from other art spaces around the country is its working class character, and that's something that I think actually locking this in the long term is an extremely valuable benefit. There's been some objection to this project, and I think certainly the height is consistent with the density bonuses available in the 2040 plan. We are certainly stretching the upper limits, and this is something that I think is achievable but would be debated. I think the Planning Commission did the right thing by both approving it and ordering some changes that I think make real improvements to adjust the building, to orient the building more towards the California building and make it more compatible with what's happening on the existing spaces. So I know there's been a lot of conversation and a lot of discussion about this, but I today am celebrating approving 160 units of affordable housing and some additional production space in the Arts District, and I hope you'll join me in doing that.
Thank you, Councilmember Fletcher. And the clerk is noting that that the motion, I just want to confirm that you've moved approval of the application and the rezoning of the property, which is listed under item 6 on the biz agenda.
I have, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Rick.
Thank you, Madam President, and very much appreciate Council Member Fletcher describing the broader context of this proposal, and certainly how it comports with our objectives around affordable housing. I think those are accurate, and I think the description of some of the changes that were made at Planning Commission, I know with his involvement, and certainly Chair of the Committee, Schrader, who was also on the commission, some of the work they did to modify, appropriately modify, in my opinion, the location of the production space. And certainly my interest in this is not the discussion around context for the neighborhood or anything like that. This is a very consistent, my involvement is very consistent with just how we treat industrial space generally. It's a diminishing asset that we have, though we do have in the 2040 marked out, validating the importance of having places where people can make things, where people can work, the importance of production jobs for our communities. And finally, that's codified in the 2040 moving forward. And that's great. We have a lot of clarity around affordable housing. We have some general clarity around the importance and locational appropriateness of production space. The thing that we have less clarity on would be the interface between those two important goals, housing and production space, in our newly designated mixed use designation, which is basically an evolution of our existing ILOD, Industrial Living Overlay designation. And this is important for my ward, and I think the city in general, but my ward in particular, as around just under 55% of all industrial property is in Ward 1. And what I've been struggling with is we're in between the old designation and land use guidelines and looking forward to the new designation. We do not have formalized criteria to check the box of what is not just a component of a development that requires mixed use, but the actual legitimate functionality that would make it so. And this is not so much to speak to this particular project, which I'm becoming more familiar with in these more recent weeks, But some of the proposals that have come across my desk that I can only call tokenism. And in the absence of guidelines, I'd be somewhat defensive of giving land rights when we have something that's mixed use in name only. Now, this project, of course, has evolved in a way where I see a lot of the components that would suggest the appropriate actual functionality that would support space that would be for making things or production. However, there are certain key things that we haven't codified that still are not present, but I think could be present in conversations I've had with the developer, rather recent ones, unfortunately, where the simple principle that we would apply to two different plats with having two different uses in terms of how they would interface in terms of their ingress and egress, how a residential property interfacing with a production property if there are two separate plats, the level of consideration we would give to these basic considerations around where the trucks go, where the ventilation is, and all that sort of thing. And I think there's been significant progress on those details here, but they do matter. And so if we were to give that level of consideration for two different plats and two different uses, why wouldn't we want to definitely have that level of scrutiny when those two uses are combined in a single building? And so again, I think great progress has been made. I'm really grateful for the work of the council member and Chair Schrader and the commission to do some of those basic fundamental adjustments that we don't have in guideline right now for our frontline staff. We certainly will have those guidelines moving forward. And so, and I definitely have direct first person concurrence from the builder that they agree that if they would be able to move a few things around, they would absolutely not commingle the uses. They would not have production activity and trucks on the same location as the residential, but they weren't given that guidance, and that's not their fault. And so what I'm willing to do is, given the progress that's been made in the last weeks, is to suggest that we postpone this till not the next council meeting, but the following one, which I believe is the first week in December, December 4th, if I'm not mistaken. Clerk can correct me if I'm wrong. And I know when we hear a call for postponement, it's like, okay, is that just for therapeutic reasons? What will we gain from it? Will it extend the angst in the community if there's disagreement? But I have strong indication that looking at how the plan lays out, the willingness of the developer to look at some alternatives to that layout that would be significant and certainly would be required in our policies if we had that clarification on the books right now. I don't think it is gratuitous or even problematic, the project. As noted, yes, it's an affordable project, but we're not pushing the button and out will pop 160 units. It has not been vetted, it's not in queue, it's not been scored. I'm assuming it would do well in that process, but these funding lines are years out. So I do think that exploring and finalizing this notion of separation of uses within a project that we would definitely have consideration for and guidelines for if they were two separate projects, that we would be able to figure that out. So I, with all due respect, I would be doing this if this were in my ward or any ward, looking for not setting precedent moving forward on our legislative right to grant a land use. So I would move to postpone this, come back to committee, the full committee of the council, December 4th.
Thank you. Councilmember Reich has made a substitute motion to postpone this item 2 cycles. Councilmember Schrader.
Thank you, Madam President. I won't be supporting Councilmember Reich's approval, and I will be supporting Councilmember Fletcher's original movement to grant the rezoning. This has already gone through Planning Commission. We've been talking about this project for quite a long time. I think it has been vetted. It is important to when the developer has worked with the city, especially after we pushed them very hard at Planning Commission. And as Councilmember rightly points out, there was a lot of changes that needed to be made. Then that work has happened, and I think we have a good project here. I really appreciate Councilmember Reich jumping in. I think that those are some very, very good points. But I also think that holding up one project while we still have work in a general policy to do is not fair to the developer as well as all the folks that are kind of working on this project.
Thank you. Councilmember Gordon is reminding me, thank you, Councilmember, that we should have a second for the motion to substitute. Is there a second for Councilmember Reich's motion?
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Council President. I would not support a postponement. I think, you know, I have heard a lot of feedback on this. I think there's been a lot of conversation. I think there is a lot of opportunity to continue refining some of these details as Councilmember Reich notes, and I think accurately notes the process of getting to financing, getting to environmental cleanup. There's a whole bunch of things that'll happen, and I think there's time for discussion. I think there's opportunity for that. I do not think that the discussion in the context of could the project be killed or not, and the kind of conversation that is happening right now is going to get us to a better outcome. I think it's important that we support affordable housing development, and I think it's important that we send a signal that we're going to try to get to yes on affordable housing development. And I think that this the kinds of conditions that are under discussion probably don't belong in the zoning portion of this discussion, which is what we're actually discussing right now in any case. And so I don't think postponing is what's going to get us there. I actually think constructive conversation moving forward once this approval is done is the right way to go. And I would ask my colleagues to move this forward today.
Thank you. Councilmember Schrader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I was going to make the same point Councilmember Fletcher did, that this is a rezoning, and the conditions need to be put in other parts. So I mean, I think that's just a point of clarity for my colleagues.
Thank you all. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, we will call the roll on the substitute motion, which is a motion to postpone. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Ellison.
No.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnston. Councilmember Johnson.
No, sorry, I thought I was unmuted.
I'm sorry, was that a no?
Yes, Mr. Clark.
Councilmember Palmisano.
No.
Councilmember Gordon.
No.
Councilmember Cano.
No.
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
No.
Councilmember Schrader.
No.
Councilmember Osmond.
No.
Councilmember Cunningham.
No.
Vice President Jenkins.
No.
President Bender.
No.
There are 2 ayes and 11 nays.
That substitute motion fails, which returns us to the original motion, which is to approve the rezoning application. Is there any further discussion on that original motion? I'll just quickly note, I love the ever expanding zoning caucus of the City Council and all of the detail that was captured in this brief discussion, which I know really reflects a lot of work at the Planning Commission and the committee. So thanks for everyone who has dug in. I agree with Councilmember Reich that once the built form overlay implementation of the comprehensive plan is completed, which I know you are all working on now, we will have set that stage for the policy level, and I think it will give a lot of opportunity for the Planning Commission and council members and others to weigh in on these details. So appreciate all the partnership that's going into making sure that this project, those details are captured and as the project evolves. And thanks to Councilmember Fletcher for leading that process. Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to note that, I will be supporting this motion by Councilmember Fletcher today. We absolutely have a shortage of affordable housing in the city, particularly deeply affordable housing. But we also, have this really unique artist community in Minneapolis and certainly that art district. One of the challenges, though, that we do have in Minneapolis is that we don't have spaces for artists to live and work. And so this contributes to that, and as well as the deep affordability for families. And so I'm happy to be able to support this motion today. Thank you.
Madam President, I believe you're muted. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thanks to my colleagues for the discussion. I don't see anyone else in queue. I do want to note for the record that the motion to approve this rezoning includes the original staff findings that are included in the CPAD report. Seeing no further discussion, Clerk, will please call the roll.
Councilmember Ellison.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
No.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Cano.
Aye.
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Schrader.
Aye.
Councilmember Osman.
Aye.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Vice President Jenkins.
Aye.
President Bender.
Aye.
There are 12 ayes and 1 nay.
That carries and that item is approved. That completes the Biz Committee agenda. Next, we have the Policy and Government Oversight Committee. That report will be given by Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you so much, Madam President. The Policy and Government Oversight Committee brings forward 16 items today. Item number 1 is a series of resolutions adopting the 2020 levy for special assessments relating to nuisance condition abatement, unpaid administrative enforcement fees and fines, the Tenant Remedy Act, and emergency housing repair. Items 2 through 10 are various contract amendments related to the public service building project, the details of which are listed on our agenda. Item number 11 is the 2020 property tax special assessment for delinquent utility charges and authorizes the utility billing to cancel any assessments as a result of payment. Item number 12 authorizes a 1-year contract with the Minnesota Historical Society to develop a comprehensive interpretive zone plan. Item number 13 is a gift acceptance of sponsorships for the 2020 Trans Equity Summit. Item number 14 is deleting from the agenda a contract amendment with Meet Minneapolis. Item number 15 is a resolution honoring Transgender Day of Remembrance 2020. Item number 16 is an agreement with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department and Metropolitan Council to assist MPD with law enforcement personnel. I move approval of the Policy and Government Oversight Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Is there any discussion on those items that the Council Vice President has moved? Seeing none, Clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Ellison.
Aye on 1 through 15, no on 16.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Cano.
Aye.
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye on 1 through 15, no on 16.
Councilmember Schrader.
Aye on 1 through 15, no on number 16.
Councilmember Osman.
Aye.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye on items 1 through 15, no on item 16.
Vice President Jenkins.
Aye.
President Bender.
Aye on items 1 through 15, no on item 16.
Madam President, I would like to also vote no on item 16.
Thank you.
Madam President, I have 13 ayes on the report except for item number 16, which was reported with 7 ayes and 6 nays.
Thank you. Those items all pass. And that completes that agenda. The next report is from the Public Health and Safety Committee and will be presented by the Chair, Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President. The Public Health and Safety Committee is bringing forward 7 items for approval today. Item number 1 is approving several actions related to the Neighborhoods 2020 plan. Item number 2 is accepting a grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for corrective lead-based paint hazard activities. Item number 3 is accepting a grant from the Minnesota Department of Human Services / Economic Assistance and Employment Support Division for COVID-19 homeless assistance. Item number 4 is accepting a grant from the Minnesota COVID Food Fund grant for food distribution services during the COVID-19 pandemic. Item number 5 is accepting a grant from the Minnesota Department of Health for statewide health improvement partnership, SHIP. Item number 6 is passage of a resolution accepting the donation from Kidda Fire Safety Products of smoke alarms to the Minneapolis Fire Department to distribute to City of Minneapolis residents. And item number 7 is approving 5 council appointments to and 1 mayoral appointment to the Police Conduct Oversight Commission. I will move approval of all 7 items.
Thank you. Councilmember Cunningham has moved the committee report. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to say a few words on item 1, but I'm also looking at item 7. I know we've gotten some emails about a couple of the appointees with some questions. I actually saw one just come through. There was a concern around kind of the process for the open appointments process. I don't know if the clerk saw that, but maybe just a point of inquiry around that, just to make sure we are following the process and able to do these appointments today. Mr. Clerk, I'm not sure if you have that email, but basically it's saying on the open appointments process website, under applicant, it says the applicant is to appear at committee to be interviewed by council members. I don't serve on that committee, so I don't know, and I didn't catch that part about if that happened or kind of procedurally where we're at with that. So maybe.
Oh, Councilmember, you were muted there at the end, but I think I caught the comment. So let's take up item 7 first, and then return back to item 1 for comment there. So, Mr. Clerk, this item is related to appointments to our Police Conduct Oversight Commission. As Councilmember Cunningham mentioned in the report, we have received some questions about the process for open appointments. If I could summarize, I think some of the questions I've seen include the process for interviewing candidates, the process related to what is publicly available related to candidates, especially those who have not been selected for recommendation. I think that captured the question that Councilmember Johnson just asked as well. And we may also have staff from civil rights who participated in this particular process as well. Mr. Clerk, could you help us with the sort of overall process piece?
Madam President, I'll be happy to attempt to answer some of those. Under the council's rules, rule number 7, section 4, it talks about required public hearings for certain appointments. It lists the charter department heads there and a number of boards and commissions for which public hearings are required. The Police Conduct Oversight Commission is not listed among those that require a public hearing or an appearance. I'm not certain where the requirement is for an appearance in front of the committee. It's certainly not in the council rules that I can find, so I can't speak further to that piece. In terms of what information is available publicly with the agenda, the public data that is collected through our application process is provided for those candidates who are selected for appointment or consideration for appointment by this body, as the mayor and council are the appointing authorities, and that would be consistent with providing that information to the public. Consistent with our privacy principles, data privacy principles, which have been adopted, the data that is not made proactively available to the public, but is still considered public data and might be available in response to a data practices request, would then, of course, be the information about candidates who have applied but are not selected for appointment. And one of the reasons that I would offer for that that is in alignment with our data privacy principles is, of course, it is a bit chilling in terms of applicants and increasing the pool of members. If public data about them is proactively disclosed, that's not my comment. Those are comments I've heard from people who apply. I share that with policymakers so that you know that these people who serve in a voluntary capacity and are not paid on our many boards and commissions, most of them are not paid, certainly does cause some to think twice about whether or not to apply, given that extra level of scrutiny that is upon them, of course. So the data that is publicly classified as public data under the law, we make available with the agenda packet for those candidates who are picked by the appointing authorities for that opportunity. For any others, of course, the data that we have that's publicly or is classified as public data is available upon request.
Thank you, Mr. Carl.
Yes, thank you. And I know Councilmember Cunningham, Madam President, in queue asked if Andrew Hawkins is online and able to speak to the process. I guess from an interview standpoint, kind of this other piece that was raised around a couple of the appointees, is their professional background in law enforcement, and if that in any way is a consideration or a potential conflict around serving in this role. I know one email really said, look, this is the civilian side's kind of only opportunity around oversight and in terms of like a board for our city. And so just wondering about the thought process and intentions behind that in the interview process. I have no doubt that we've got some really great candidates for the PCOC, and I think it is just helpful if there can be a little more public dialogue talking through that thought process and the intentionality around that.
Thank you, Councilmember. It looks like we've added our civil rights staff to this call who can perhaps speak to some of the detail. I will note that I also do not serve on the committee and so was not part of the process of approving this at committee, but I did have the chance to speak to one of the applicants who has been the focus of some of the questions and concerns, who's my constituent. She has a wealth of personal and professional experiences and a real passion for particularly advocating for youth in our city. And I think is clearly committed in my brief conversation with her, not part of the official process, to really tackle the deep problems that are facing our system of policing and public safety in our city. So I was very grateful that she was willing to take her time to participate and volunteer in this role. She's also a student studying public policy, and so she has a perspective that goes beyond just criminal justice to see connections between housing and other things. Part of her experience is working with youth who were experiencing homelessness in the past. So I was, again, grateful that this particular person was willing to step up and volunteer. Mr. Hawkins, do you want to speak more to the process related to this particular appointment process?
Sure, Council President Bender, I'm happy to speak to this. Kind of add some clarity and answer any questions that the council might have for us as far as kind of what the process entailed and what it looked like this year. So I guess just to quickly start, I'm Andrew Hawkins. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Civil Rights Department. And this year, obviously, we're all working in different capacities. I was kind of helping out with overseeing and managing the appointment process for the PCOC, for this current cycle that we were under. One of the things that we've kind of learned this year with all the technology that we had available was that it actually provided an opportunity during doing these remote interviews, but also to bring more people into the fold for this. So I know Maria Lee from our staff was critical in kind of helping to manage this and make sure that we reached out to members of the PHS, the Public Health and Safety Committee, to participate in the interview. We reached out to the mayor's office, and then we also, which is something that is fairly new this year, we actually reached out to all of the council members just to kind of make sure everybody knew what the process looked like, what the timeline looked like, and kind of invite them and their staff if they wanted to, to basically join the call, not necessarily in an interview capacity, but just to kind of listen in to see how things were going. If there were any candidates that were from their wards, we made sure we called that out as well. So we did have a number of applicants this year. We were very deliberate in doing some outreach, trying to make sure that we had a very diverse and qualified applicant pool. We're currently in the midst of beginning the second round of interviews. We have 2 other seats that we're going to fill for 2021. So this also isn't considered a closed process at this point either. The candidates that were brought forward were identified by the group, which contained, as I previously indicated, civil rights staff, mayoral staff, and council representative staff. They were all kind of uniformly agreed upon to be the best candidates moving forward. They all interviewed very well. This also, I think, represents the most diverse group that we've put forward for the PCOC. And I mean, it's been, at least since my time with the city, I think this might be if we potentially have had somebody in the past, but I think this is by far the most candidates we've had from North. So we do have some, more North side representation, which I think is important, just since I think, various parts of the city bring various issues, forward as, what their priorities are. So it's good to have that representative body. Council President Bender already alluded to it. We have one member who, I think she's pursuing its ethics and equality in law enforcement degree. We have another person we brought forward who's done a lot of youth advocacy work with youth experiencing homelessness or that have had trouble with the justice system already. We have another person who's a social caseworker, social worker, who's very involved in the community. I mean, also, and a lot of our candidates this year too are bringing that personal perspective to it, where they're, it's very obvious, from sitting down with them and having a chance to speak with them, that they have a very personal connection to a lot of this. They have children that, are in the community get impacted by this. So yeah, we were very pleased with this group and felt they were the most qualified people to bring forward. But with that said, I'm happy to provide anything else I can or answer any questions if that would be helpful to members of the council.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson, do you have any further questions?
Council President Benner, I just think that that's really helpful context, and it's good to have that out for the public as these concerns have been brought forward around this. This is obviously a very important role in our city, and especially with all the conversations going on right now. And we want to make sure that there's as much transparency as possible around it and vetting. And I think even, frankly, Madam President, just hearing your personal testimony was really impactful and helpful as well from the conversation that you had. And, happy to move on to comments on item number 1, but I guess maybe we see if any other colleagues have anything to say about item number 7.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Any further discussion on item 7?
Madam President.
Mr. Carl.
I just wanted to clarify too, on the agenda as things are listed, it can be a bit confusing because people are listed more than once. As you are aware, this council has asked us to prioritize this body because it was not able to meet quorum and therefore not able to do its business. The staff and civil rights have moved very expeditiously despite the very detailed process that Mr. Hawkins described for you. So what we're doing here is appointing people to fill out the existing vacant terms and then immediately appointing them to a new term. So that's why, for example, people will be filled out through the end of this year and then also filling out a new term through 2022. Just wanted to clarify in case there was concern about how it appeared on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Carl. And some of the feedback we have received, including from at least one current member of the PCOC, is that perhaps for future appointments, inviting the folks to come to committee to speak if they'd like. So I think we'll take those suggestions and follow up with yourself, Mr. Carl, and the chair for those future appointment processes. Mayor Fry, did you want to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam President. You actually covered most of the items that I was going to myself. This was a really thorough process. From those that we talked to that were actually part of the interviewing panel, they said this is one of the better processes that we've ever had with respect to some of our boards and commissions. I just want to speak in favor of all of the recommendations that came through. Of course, our recommendation from our office was the young woman that you mentioned, Malaysia Abdi, who has really an incredible resume, has done some great work, and we do support her.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam President. I came into this meeting prepared to vote against all of these applicants today, and I've been really uplifted and satisfied by the conversation. And I've changed my mind as a result of what I've heard from our professional staff as well as others on the call. I am concerned about this committee because it just receives so much public attention, and any concern or question about it being done improperly or imperfectly, we are all imperfect, was a concern to me. But I do think, given the remote situation that we're under and the amount of work that's happened and the support of so many of my colleagues, I will vote for it today. So don't ever think that a conversation during a council meeting won't change a vote, because in this situation, Councilmember Johnson bringing this up actually changed mine. And I'm hopeful that more dialogue on more controversial decisions will help people like me open our minds to other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And on that note, I know we all expect a lot of scrutiny and questions about what's happening related to public safety in the city. So thank you to the people who got in touch to ask questions. As I noted, I think it will help inform future process. And I think that once folks get to see and know these group of volunteers that we are, if they are approved today, that their work will be really consequential for our city. I think they are all ready to take this very seriously, and they know what they're signing up for. They want to get involved right now to help us solve these issues. So again, I just appreciate the folks who stepped up to volunteer at this time. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, I'll say that as the chair of the committee, that this was the first time that I chaired a committee that the PCOC had appointments coming through, and the feedback is very well heard and received for future appointments in terms of creating more space for us to have a public dialogue at the committee itself. So I just wanted to note that. I also just want to say that I think that it's really important for when we talk about police conduct that we have a diverse representation of demographics, particularly those who are disproportionately impacted by police misconduct. So I think that it's really, it's quite amazing that the group of folks that we are bringing forward, it disproportionately represents Black women in terms of like this small pool of recommendations. But to my knowledge, we have, I believe, 3 Black women as a part of this group. Now, that's obviously not enough. They're 3 very qualified, committed Black women, and I think that that's very important for us to raise that up and acknowledge that. I do want to speak to as the chair, we received a letter from Linnea Jacobson, and I wanted to, because she has experienced some personal attacks. She wrote a letter to us as council members, the PCOC, and specifically the Public Health and Safety Committee members. And so I just wanted to pull some highlights out of it. It's a long letter. I'm happy to send it to other council members as folks are interested. But so she said, council members, PCOC, and PHS committee members, thank you so much for accepting me and moving forward my appointment as a new member of the Police Conduct Oversight Committee. I am writing you this letter to ask asking that you continue to support my appointment and my efforts. I've been a resident of Minneapolis since 2007 and settled in North Minneapolis community when purchasing my first home in 2012. I fell in love with Minneapolis because of what it had to offer for its individual communities. Minneapolis offers culture programs and activities for children, community events, and the arts, and ways to be an active participant in molding and shaping your neighborhoods through community and council meetings. My initial reason for moving to Minneapolis was because I started a career in public safety in 2006 and needed to be closer to my parents for support. In my career, I have always played a supportive role to law enforcement officers and leadership. I've also had the privilege of organizing and participating in trainings, organizational leadership forums, command staff meetings, and department strategic planning. Most importantly, I was able to connect with others and build relationships with the leaders and the front line. And so let me go ahead and so where she speaks specifically is, however, today my boys are 13 and 18, and at times, and the times couldn't be more different than when I started my career. My husband and I have never in our life been worried about their interactions with the police until now. Because they are old enough to venture out into the community on their own, as the parents raising 2 African-American young men, we do have a legitimate fear, and like many people, spend a lot of time praying and having the talk. We worry about our oldest, who is now driving, and the youngest, who wants to do things like walk to the corner store, play basketball across the street. When my 18-year-old wants to have friends over, I tell him that they have to spend the night or leave at 8 p.m. because I don't want them leaving our neighborhood after dark due to crime and fear of interactions with the police. We take extra precautions and find ourselves being helicopter parents because we have reservations about our local law enforcement. I will forward the rest of this letter, but I just wanted to name that we have somebody who is very committed to our community. I think it's huge that for the first time, well, maybe not the first time, but at least I'm excited that we have significant Northside representation, as well as representation of Black women who bring lots of different perspectives. So if folks are interested, I can send over that letter if you did not receive it as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gordon.
Yeah, I really appreciate this discussion, and I know that we have heard concerns about this. My office participated in some of the interviews. I also looked back and looked into the process and understand there were 15 applications, and we went through a very thorough process. I guess the point that I wanted to lift up out of this is in the ordinance, we don't say anything about a restriction on somebody who's worked in any of these jobs that we're talking about now as some kind of indication that they should or shouldn't apply. And a lot of times people will have a job, even a low-level job in some organization that doesn't necessarily mesh with, the leadership of that organization or institution, with their values or where they're coming from and all of those things. So I want us to be careful about making assumptions based on something like that, and a label like that might even be temporary in somebody's life and career. I also do know at least one of the applicants informally, and think that she's a very strong applicant, and I'll be supporting this. But I think it's good that we do due diligence. And it also made me think about, as I'm looking at the ordinance, which is open and we're amending, are there other qualifications and there are other considerations, or maybe there is a requirement we want to put in the ordinance about appearing before the council somehow? I mean, that's where we could put it. And this has given me food for thought. And I just want to make sure that people know the door is open. And I actually, hopefully in the next weeks or a couple months, I'll be talking to council members, and we're doing more community engagement about these proposed amendments to the oversight ordinance. But this is something to think about if we decide it is a priority, and where would we actually land if we wanted to look at some kind of restriction related to outside employment on this board or commission or anyone. And is that really where we want to go? If we don't put it in the ordinance, then of course it could be some soft way that we're trying to judge it and we're looking at it. And I think it is an easy way for someone from the outside just to look at an application, see some highlights, and then try to make a judgment call just based on that. I think it was to our credit and to the team's credit that they dug more deeply into it, actually interviewed 10 people and made a careful selection. So I'm going to be supporting it, but really think this is a healthy discussion for us to have. And I really think it's healthy that we have people who are deeply concerned about accountability and oversight here in City Hall.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to say a couple more things. I personally invested the time to interview all of these commissioners myself. I brought one of my staff with me as well. The letter that Councilmember Cunningham read from, I think, demonstrates the kind of dedication and commitment to the role that we believe we want to see on a commission like this. When we had the opportunity to speak with Ms. Jacobson, it was clear that a driving factor for her interest in serving on this commission stems from being the mother of two Black boys and the concerns about the safety for her family. All of these applicants had a deep and love for Minneapolis. As a committee, we talked about this a lot. It was our belief that somebody's job title really does not necessarily express their values, and it was their values that we were exploring through this interview process. All of them wanted to improve policing through a variety of methods, such as transparency, promoting racial equity, and also accountability. Commissioners with first-hand experience with government or some aspects of the criminal justice system and who have seen the system in multiple dimensions up close, I think have really strengthened the work of the PCOC in the past. Also impressive this cycle was that we've had the most applicants of color to ever serve on this commission. So I'm hoping that this diversity of thought and perspective is going to bring true positive change to Minneapolis. The entire interview panel was really enthusiastic about this group of appointees and the potential they could bring. So I'm happy to answer any concerns or questions from my colleagues about this, but I want to give my enthusiastic support behind Councilmember Cunningham for these applicants. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on item 7? I don't see any. We are taking up the whole agenda at one time though, so if anyone changes their mind, let me know. We'll return back to item 1 then with Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam President. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes speaking to this item. The good news with Neighborhoods 2020 is the racial equity formula. That is huge. It is a good thing, and it is long overdue. I also want to speak to a tension here created actually not by the Neighborhoods 2020 guidelines, but by policymakers. And that's really between the base funding to sustain each individual organization and the new formula given the total funding pool that we directed staff to operate under when developing these guidelines. This is really an unnecessary tension that would not exist if the total pool is larger. and that tension puts the network itself at risk. What Neighborhoods 2020 proposes is $10,000, moving to $10,000 for a neighborhood. In return for $10,000, they have to do a lot. And I just want to name some of the things that they would have to do to consider if it's realistic to expect these things to get done for $10,000. Holding an annual meeting and elections, onboarding and training new board members, hosting and staffing board meetings throughout the year, accounting, financial compliance, taxes, reports, audits, legal compliance, bylaws, maintaining and updating manuals of policies, procedures, and practices, running a website and social media accounts, grant writing, contract management, navigating employment laws and other requirements such as workers' comp and insurance, and meaningfully engaging thousands of residents throughout the neighborhood. All of that is before even considering a physical space in the community, or phones and printers and the computer equipment and other supplies to do all of this work. In the best case scenario, neighbors will have volunteers with the time and experience to take on all of that administrative work free of charge. They'll fundraise their way up to a minimum level to be able to keep the lights on. They may already be combined or will combine with other neighborhood associations, in which case they might have 20,000 or 30,000 in base funding, though that also means they'll have even more work on their plates serving thousands of additional residents. That's the best case scenario under providing base funding of $10,000. But I think the realistic case is that we will see gaps start to emerge in the network in neighborhoods that no longer have an association. Let's turn to this draft Neighborhoods 2020 plan to understand why that is a problem. I'm going to quote from the plan. Neighborhood level community organizations and the neighborhood associations that provide or that support it play a critical role in keeping residents informed, connected to their community, and empowered to guide and influence decisions that affect their lives. Through past and current efforts, neighborhood associations have helped improve safety, celebrate diversity, build community, preserve housing stock, promote economic vitality, foster a sustainable environment, and improve health throughout the city. End quote. Those are the words in our Neighborhoods 2020 plan. So we're in this dilemma where the funding pool that's currently anticipated is likely going to result in no longer having a cohesive network, but instead having gaps throughout the network, which means thousands, tens of thousands, or maybe even over the years from now, over 100,000 residents will no longer have such an organization playing what the Neighborhood 2020 plan states is a critical role that improves safety, celebrates diversity, builds community, preserves housing stock, promotes economic vitality, fosters a sustainable environment, and improves health. There's perhaps a more important issue at stake here too. If we want to undo hundreds of millions of dollars of disinvestment over decades that were racially inequitable, we're going to need more than just a few $1 million moving forward. So the question of the overall pool of funding is interrelated to this item before us today. We have an opportunity during the upcoming budget process to both raise the base funding to maintain the network and do more to correct the historic disinvestments in communities of color that have taken place over decades. I'm in conversation with a few colleagues and staff on a budget amendment, working on a budget amendment to do just this. It's also not going to be easy given the budget constraints we're facing from COVID, but I hope we can find a way. I hope my colleagues will keep an open mind during the upcoming budget presentation and try to find a way too. Increasing the base pool can be a win-win that helps advance these critical priorities of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted, spoke to this in committee, but wanted to make sure to do it on this larger platform as well. I just want to make sure that I say a big thank you to NCR Director David Rubador, as well as the Policy Director Steve Gallagher, all of the neighborhood associations, all of the individuals and volunteers who have worked on this, and Cura, who have all worked together on this significant body of work for quite some time now. We passed a rather rigorous staff direction last March that established the steering committee as well as expectations around a racial equity analysis, and the questions that we had to wrangle with as a steering committee, in which I co-chaired with our budget director, Micah Innermill, was around based on the information that we gathered through the racial equity analysis conducted by Cura, that if we wanted to leverage the funding that goes to neighborhood organizations, that can be done through this racial equity funding formula. However, with $25,000 base funding, with a $4.1 million pool, that would then, and that's one of the recommendations that's being brought forward with the budget committee, is to decrease that base funding to $10,000, slowly decreasing over time. So struggling with that question, as well as is the priority to maintain a citywide network of community neighborhood organizations? That is a challenging question, and I think that question is again before us. We wrangled with this last March when it came before us, and that's still the question that we have. A lot of folks say they don't want an either or, they want a both and. It is very challenging to do a both and with the pot of money that we have. And if folks look at the legislative file, the racial equity analysis is in there that shows the map of the racial equity impact. I should really just say equity impact in having a $10,000 base versus $25,000. And if we do not expand the pool, then that is really what we are exploring and making a decision about as a council. But we are in a very different place, though, than we were 18 months ago. And that is due to incredibly hard work that NCR put into this. Mr. Gallagher had, I believe it was either weekly or monthly meetings with neighborhood organizations, gather their feedback, engaged in conversations with them. We as council members have received a lot of emails. I mean, just incredibly rigorous work. And where folks are is that everybody is on the same page that racial equity is a priority. And the question has then moved to, do we need to expand the base funding? So that's a different conversation that is before us with the budget. But I do just want to say specifically to these program guidelines, excellent job to NCR staff. Much gratitude to the neighborhood organizations and all the steering committee members who all made this possible. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham. I said this at committee, but I want to reiterate how much I appreciate staff's work in really engaging with the right partners and, building the support, as the chair mentioned, under your leadership, Councilmember Cunningham, to really focus and raise equity in this program. I shared some stories at committee about, about my experience with the neighborhood organizations and just seeing such a dramatic change thanks to the leadership of folks in Ward 10, making sure that the organizations are leveraging their significant public dollars to really do outreach, to advocate for folks who live in the neighborhood no matter how long they've lived there. Of course, Ward 10 is a high renter population. A couple of my neighborhoods have 90% renter. And really just making sure that they're engaging and advocating for folks who maybe don't even know they have a neighborhood organization until someone reaches out to them. So it's been a big, huge shift in Ward 10 and a testament to a lot of folks' work. And I think also just a reaction to us being more clear that we do want this program to be focused in equity and race equity. We want there to be standards of accountability, and I do think that the piece that's coming about funding is really critical to that. We can't really do equitable investment and do everything at the same time. And so those will be some of the questions before us. So thanks again to everyone who's worked on this. I don't see any further discussion on the committee report. So Council Vice President Jenkins.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. And sorry for my delay in entering into this conversation, but just briefly want to state as a very active and fully participating member of the steering committee, I stand by the formula that has been created as well, and concur with Councilmember Cunningham in gratitude to the staff and the neighborhood organizations and to Cura that have been very, very engaged and involved throughout some very tumultuous times in our community to work and continue to work to try to get this right. And so I'll be looking forward to our budget discussions, but we certainly must maintain this sort of race equity, or just, as you said, Councilmember Cunningham, just equity in the funding formula. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President, and thanks for all of your leadership as part of that steering committee as well. With that, no further discussion on the committee report, and clerk will please call the roll.
Councilmember Ellison.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Cano.
Aye.
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Schrader.
Aye.
Councilmember Osman.
Aye.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Vice President Jenkins.
Aye.
President Bender.
Aye.
There are 13 ayes.
That carries and the report is adopted. Finally, we have the report from the Transportation and Public Works Committee given by the Chair, Councilmember Reich.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee forwards 5 items for today's consideration. Item 1 is the 4th Street North, 4th Street reconstruction project and the actions to move forward with that. Item 2 is the Weber Parkway, 44th Avenue North, Lyndale Avenue North, and Humboldt Avenue North reconstruction project and the actions required to move forward with that. The remaining items are item 3, temporary construction easement agreement with the Park and Rec for stormwater tunnel reconstruction work. Item 4 is the bid for repair and replacement of private water valves and disconnects. And the final item is a bid for variable message signs. Madam President, I move all items as submitted.
Thank you, Councilmember Reich has moved the committee report. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Ellison.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Cano.
Aye.
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Schrader.
Aye.
Councilmember Osman.
Aye.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Vice President Jenkins.
Aye.
President Bender.
Aye.
There are 13 ayes.
That carries and that report is adopted. The next order of business is the resolutions, and we have the 2 honorary resolutions that we presented at the beginning of the meeting, recognizing the leadership and service of Director Velma Korbel and the resolution recognizing Dr. Fadhil, who's leaving way too soon. So appreciative of both of their leadership. I'll ask for a motion to adopt both of those honorary resolutions.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Ellison.
Aye.
Councilmember Goodman.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Cano.
Aye.
Councilmember Reich.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Schrader.
Aye.
Councilmember Osman.
Aye.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Vice President Jenkins.
Aye.
President Bender.
Aye.
There are 13 ayes.
That carries, and both of those resolutions are adopted. The next order of business is announcements. Are there any announcements from council members today? Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam President. I do want to lift up the fact that next Friday is Transgender Day of Remembrance. And again, and just read the resolution that we passed in conjunction with the POGO committee report. And note that next Friday, the I-35W bridge, as well as the Target building will be lit up in pink and blue coloration that signifies the transgender flag in honor of Transgender Day of Remembrance. And so if you will indulge me, I will share this resolution observing November 20th as Transgender Day of Remembrance, whereas sadly, 2020 has already claimed the lives of at least 34 transgender or gender nonconforming people who were fatally shot or killed by other violent means. And whereas prior to the end of the summer this year, the number of deaths of transgender and gender nonconforming people due to violent crimes had already surpassed the total number reported for 2019. And whereas we face an epidemic of violence against transgender women of color in the United States, Black and Latinx transgender women represent a vast majority of these fatalities and experiencing violence at disproportionately higher rates. And whereas too often these murders and violent attacks go unreported or are misreported, transgender women of color face violence every day and fear turning to law enforcement for help due to furthering interactions of violence, victim blaming, stigmatization, and harmful characterization. And whereas on June 1st this year, an estimated group of 30 men brutally beat Ayanna Dior, a Black transgender woman from Minneapolis who narrowly escaped the escalating attack that occurred outside of a store. And whereas, thankfully, Ayanna Dior was able to escape with her life, yet this incident demonstrates the prescient danger of transphobic violence against trans women of color in our community that has claimed the lives of too many others across our country. And whereas one of those lost this past year was Christine Zephyr, a Minneapolis resident, and whereas transgender and gender nonconforming people whom we've lost in the last year due to violence perpetrated against them were neighbors, students, co-workers, friends, and family members whose lives were taken from their loved ones and their communities. And whereas society continues to put constraints on the lives of trans and gender nonconforming folks by denying access to employment, safe and affordable housing, access to trans-specific health care, and other criminalization that leads to depression, drug use, and other destructive realities that shortens the lifespan of transgender individuals. And whereas Trans Day of Remembrance is also observed as Trans Day of Resilience, to celebrate the resilience and power of trans and gender nonconforming people still living, fighting for their safety, and protecting each other. And whereas transgender and gender nonconforming people deserve the resources and protections necessary to be celebrated in life and not only in death. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and city council observe November 20th as Transgender Day of Remembrance, in acknowledging and mourning the lives of trans and gender nonconforming people we've lost in the past year due to violence, and recognize that there is much work ahead in our duties to help create a safer, more equitable city for our transgender and gender nonconforming community members. Thank you, Madam President. And I hope you all will join me in uplifting and celebrating this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President, for reading that resolution and your leadership. We did adopt that resolution officially as part of our Policy and Government Oversight Committee agenda at committee and today. Council Member Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President. All I just wanted to add to that is that I love being trans, and I'm grateful to live in a city that holds space for our community. So that's all I have. Thank you, Council Vice President Jenkins, for bringing that forward.
Thank you both. I think we've all seen the ways that your representation on the council has so many impacts. I'll never forget the dramatic shift we saw in people coming to City Hall and testifying and feeling so much more comfortable in so many ways, including in expressing their gender identity verbally, and it just was palpable. I don't know if other people noticed, but I certainly did, and it's just one of the very many ways that your leadership is so important. Any further announcements today? Seeing none, that concludes announcements, and we have included all of our items from today's agenda. With nothing further to come before the council and without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned to December 2nd. Is that the right date?
Correct, Madam President.
Because Monday's hearing is part of the committee.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll be adjourning this meeting to December 2nd at 6:05 p.m., at which time the full council will conduct the second public hearing on the proposed 2021 budget. That is the statutorily required truth and taxation hearing that covers the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget, the consolidated plan, and the proposed water and sewer rates. And we do also have a budget hearing on Monday during the daytime, which is part of our budget committee, as well as a second hearing in the budget committee itself as well. So thank you to everyone for all the work that went into the items on today's agenda. Have a great weekend. I'll see you all soon.